Yo, salute to the people. It's the social forecast. So I just came across this story where an Iowa mom was arrested and charged with endangerment for leaving her children, 2 and a 4-year-old, alone in the car for 45 minutes in minus 15-degree wind chill weather. Now, some of the comments under this news article I was reading, comments like, "Oh, she shouldn't have her kids. They should be put up for adoption. She should know better." All the normal things that you would think you would hear. And I got to thinking, and I realized I was a little bit conflicted. Part of me shares the same sentiments as I've seen in some of these comments, and then the other part of me started thinking. Now, I'm an early '80s baby, and I came up in a generation when it was the norm, as early as fourth grade, for you to be home alone. You know, many of my peers, you knew not to open the door. You knew not to, do anything that you shouldn't be doing while your parents weren't around because parents had to work. I know several friends of mine who, when we got out of school, they had to go to their parent, maybe their single mother's job and wait in the car for them to get off. And granted, if it was hot, they had the AC on. If it was cold, they had the heat on. But my generation, being left alone in a car or being left alone at home, this was a normal thing. You didn't think anything of it. And every now and then you heard stories about kids who were home alone and the fire started, or in a car. And, you hear these stories every now and then. They pop up. But you got to think, for every one of these stories that you hear, how many instances do you think these things are happening? Far more than what we ever hear about, because we only ever hear about the situations that actually goes left. And then I started thinking, we live in such a judgmental world. We live in such a crazy point the finger at everybody else world. And I don't think enough people stop to realize, I don't care how good a parent you think you are. I don't care how careful you think you are with your children. There are certain things that are blatant that you just know, or should know, I would hope, not to do. And then there are things that every parent, if you've had kids for long enough, every parent has done something, maybe even a few somethings that you look back and you'd be like, damn, that situation could have gone left, or my kids could have been in, potential danger because of something, an error in judgment that I made. That's every parent. If you're not a parent who has made an error in judgment that could have potentially went left for your children, you haven't been a parent long enough. Just wait, you will. That's just a part of parenting. That's just goes with anything in life. Because you got to think, with anything in life that we want to do, be it a profession, be it something for recreation, hunting, whatever. You want to get a permit to carry a gun. You have to undergo certain classes. You have to get, certified in gun safety. There's certain things you have to go through to be qualified to operate a firearm, to prove that you can do so safely. You want to be a doctor. Even if you want to hand medication over a counter, you got to go take a test to show that you're qualified, in order to be certified as a, let's say, pharmacy technician, to be able to hand drugs over a counter. Something that simple, but there are more things involved in that need to go into that process to show that you are qualified in doing that. You want to drive a car, which could potentially be a dangerous weapon. You have to go and you have to go through driver's ed, go to a driving school, take a test to get your license to show that you are qualified to operate that motor vehicle. One of the most dangerous things on the planet is being a parent. There are no tests that you're required to take to be a parent. If you want to get a divorce, in most states, in order for a divorce to even be finalized by the court, those two parents, if they have kids, those two parties have to undergo a parenting class. If you want to buy a home and you want financing from the bank, for first-time buyers, one of the requirements in that process is that you go to a first-time buyers class. These are things that are just required. But because the government doesn't have any say-so over reproductive rights, there's never been a requirement for new parents to undergo classes or training of any kind in order to be qualified and know what the do's and the don'ts of being a parent. What would that look like if that was something that was in place? I don't know. Probably will never be because, again, that's the government infringing on reproductive rights and not something that the people would allow because, Big Brother is not in the philosophy of America, right, for what it stands for. And that's fine. I'm not saying that that is necessarily a thing that should be in place. But my sister Jasmine from the Comfort Zone made a dope point in our last live stream, our round table. She made a point about how there's so many parents in the generation that we came up in who were raising us who may have been dealing with mental issues, be it bipolarism or depression or whatever, and just went undiagnosed or wasn't known what it really looked like back then, and then raised offspring who are now having to interact in adult relationships and don't have a clue because weren't raised in stable environments. Everything that you do is not necessarily a blatant thing. Sometimes people just don't have a clue what the fuck they're doing. That's just life. It just goes with the territory of anything that you can engage in. So when I hear a story like this, it's sad, it's tragic. This woman is charged with endangerment. Whether she takes a plea deal, whether she's offered something light in the way of probation or community service or what have you, pretty sure this woman's not going to have her kids taken away from her. The news story didn't mention that her kids were taken away. The news story didn't mention whether or not her kids needed medical attention, if they were hurt or in any way, shape, or form. She's a mother. Y'all know how I feel about it. Mothers get plenty of chances when they make mistakes or do things that they shouldn't as mothers, to keep their children and to try again. And, it is what it is. Certain situations you say, okay, it was stupid, but should this person lose their kids over it? I don't know. It's not my place to make that decision or even give an opinion on. I would just say to people, if you are a parent, whether you're an adoptive parent, a foster parent, whether you are custodial custody of your younger brother or younger sister or nieces and nephews, but you have kids whom you are the full-time guardian of, then you understand, like I do, that at some point you are going to do some dumb shit and be like, what the fuck, that shit could have really went left. If you're not a parent or you haven't gone through a situation like that yet, give it some time, you will. And if you're not a parent, you shouldn't even be speaking on these things because you couldn't possibly understand or fathom the job of a parent and the many things that go into that. This is not just about a parent leaving their child or children in a cold or hot car. Like I said, there are things that you should just know not to do. I'm just talking about in general how judgmental we are as a as a social community and how we're so quick to look at the things that people do and say, up, look at this crazy shit. But in all actuality, something like this, similar, could happen to anyone. It's just when things don't go wrong, it just becomes a normal habit. And that's with anything in life. Most people, if they do something, even if it's not something that they should be doing, if they don't get caught or they don't get called on it or there's no negative outcome to that thing, there's nothing really to stop you from doing it until something goes wrong, until something goes terribly left. So I would just remind people not to be so judgmental. As far as this mom goes, I would hope that going forward, this is not some behavior that she would repeat again. I'm going to continue to follow the story, of course. I follow all the stories that I speak on this platform just because I'm curious in most cases about what the outcome is. Sometimes I do a follow-up blog. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's not necessary. I just put it out there, certain stories, when I feel like I have a message to add to it or something to, just put out there for people to chew on and think about. Anyway, like, comment, and subscribe. I don't pretend to know everything. I just know what I know. Social forecast. Salute.